All right, so AI is becoming more and more commonly used now when it comes to studying at university. People are using it to solve assignment problems or using it to prepare for tests or whatever aspect of the studying that they're doing. But as someone who has gotten straight A pluses for 3.5 years now in my studies, for someone who does quite well in school, I don't really touch AI when it comes to actually studying. Okay, and if I do, it's not like how most students do. And so my perspective on this is that if you're using AI to study, how most students use AI to study, it's actually probably doing more harm than good because the other top students that I know are also not relying on AI in their studies. And so that's what we're going to talk about in this video. I want to talk about first, why AI is harmful to your studies, why it's actually harming your grades, even though it might feel like it's helping you, and then offer you an alternative solution to how you can actually implement AI in a better way that won't harm you in the long run, that will help you you know, actually do well and get the grades that you want. So we're going to get into that now. The first aspect of why I think AI is actually harming your grades and not helping them is that it creates learning debt. And it does that by providing you with a false sense of learning. So how most students use AI. Maybe they have an assignment and they don't quite know how to solve a certain problem on the assignment. Okay, so what do? They open ChatGPT or they open whatever AI they use and they ask for a solution to the assignment question, right? And then they walk through that question or the solution provided by AI and they kind of nod their head and maybe they're jotting down the lines of the solution as it goes along. And they're just following along and seeing if it makes sense to them. And if it does, well, perfect. That's it, right? That's problem solved. Assignment complete, question done. You save yourself time, right? Here's the issue with that, okay? Learning material, learning anything requires mental effort, okay? If you do not input mental effort, you cannot be learning. And so when you had ChatGPT create the solution for you, provide you with a solution that didn't take mental effort from you, therefore you did not learn, okay? And so you have this false sense of learning in your head. Like you thought you learned the material. You read it, right? Like you understand it. You went through that whole solution that was provided and it made sense to you. But that's not learning, okay? That's not providing the solution on yourself. That's not producing that solution by yourself. You cannot, I'll say it again, you cannot learn without inputting some level of mental effort, okay? And so in this case, when you use AI to do the assignment, okay, there's no learning there because there was no mental effort. And you might say, okay, that's fine. I saved myself time, but did you really save yourself time? Because now you don't know the material. Now you're going to need to spend extra time preparing when it comes to exam time, trying to relearn all the material that you learned earlier on using AI. But because you didn't learn it earlier, instead of just reviewing material and having exam prep be this smooth time where you just practice a few things, you actually need to relearn entire, concepts, entire things from the ground up because you didn't learn it the first time. You just had AI or something else provide you with a solution. So the whole thing I want you to get here is in order to learn, you need to have mental effort. You need to be inputting mental effort. In the case of AI, mental effort is not there. It doesn't take mental effort to read off a solution, to understand a solution produced by somebody else. Therefore, you do not learn. I know you might be trying to save yourself time during the school year, right? You don't want to do the assignment right now, so you're going to get the AI to help you just speed up the process, right? But understand that these assignments, these are for you so that you can speed up your exam studying process, okay? So that you can speed up and not harm yourself when the time actually comes to write a midterm worth 30% of your grade or write a final worth 50% of your grade, right? Properly learning the material now is the best thing you can do to prepare for that because then when that time comes, you don't need to relearn the material. You just need to review material, do some practice. And that leads to a much smoother, much more enjoyable exam season. So you got to think about the trade offs. Do you want, to not train in the gym, to not see your friends, to have to pull all nighters during the periods coming up to the exams? Or do you just want to put in the extra hour every couple of weeks to actually learn the material properly so that you can save yourself from those long hours, those, that period of time during exam season where everybody else can't go to the gym, everybody else has to stop all their hobbies, they just need to study, they can't see friends because they didn't properly prepare. So if you want to save yourself from that, if you just want to have like a more balanced, enjoyable university experience throughout the whole semester, learn it right the first time. And how do you do that? Well, you just skip out on the AI. You just do the assignment the first time, learn it right the first time, okay? Save yourself in the future, save yourself during exam period, because that's really, the stressful times that you probably would like to be a little bit less stressful. So put in that little bit of extra effort because that 1 hour of effort early on is going to save you multiple hours of effort come exam time. So that's the big drawback when it comes to using AI or ChatGPT or whatever it is you use when it comes to studying. It's really giving you a false sense of learning. And because you're not actually learning, you're creating learning debt and you're just making it so much harder on yourself in the future. So keep that in mind. But there's also one other negative aspect of using AI for your studies, right? There was a study where people were divided up into multiple groups to write an essay. Okay. So there was an AI group, maybe there was a group who only used the internet, and then there was a group who, didn't use anything. They just did things from their brain. And the students who wrote the AI essay, who used AI to help them write essays, they just didn't understand the material that they wrote down, much less. They didn't recall it. They didn't understand the concepts. They didn't, memorize anything. They didn't have any understanding, or they had the least understanding of the three groups, which of course makes sense, right? They put in the least mental effort, so they learned the least. But that's not what I want to get at with this study, because this study also showed it didn't just affect their understanding, their cognitive recall of that essay. There was also residual cognitive performance decline. I'm not sure what the exact negatives were, but the students who used that AI, if they were to go and do the same assignment, the same essay, whatever it was, without the AI, they would then perform even worse. And of course, this kind of makes sense intuitively, right? Because they were relying on the AI, and if you're not using your brain, if you're offloading that to someone else, your brain's going to forget how to properly do the things that you were trying to do, right? You use it or you lose it, right? And so that's something to be aware of, okay? Because it's not just what I talked about earlier, how AI creates a false sense of learning that leads to learning debt. And it's not even just what I just said now about how using AI produces more generic, worse results because the students couldn't understand the material, they couldn't connect points and connect ideas. It's also that using AI leads to a decline in performance even when you take that AI out of the question after. So it's not like you're actively harming yourself. You're actively harming your ability to perform on the test where you won't have AI if you use it on the assignments where you do have AI. So really just keep this in mind, because it's not helping you, no matter how like enticing it is, no matter how good it seems to just put your assignment into the AI, get the solution for you, you're done in 5 minutes. It's really not helping you. It's really just not helping you, and it's just harming your grades in the long run. So that's what I really want to drive home here, is that the value isn't there, and it's harming your studies, it's harming your grades more than it's helping. Now, I did say that I would offer you some alternative. How can you actually use AI effectively in your studies? And the first word I would say is that less. Just use AI less, and that's using AI more effectively. Okay, don't use it relyingly. You're not relying on AI to provide you with solutions. You're not relying on AI as your whole study guide or as your whole, basis for how you're preparing for the test. Personally, I use AI very sparingly, but if I do, I'm using it as an assistance, as a tool, rather than actually being relying on it. So, for example, last year in my machine design class, it's a later year mechanical engineering course, and so there's a lot of, concepts, ideas, definitions that we had to remember so that we could, learn to express them to other people in a concise way. And so as a result, the test, we had some definitions. And so to help me in the studying, I basically collected a list of all these definitions, put them in ChatGPT, and I said, hey, quiz me on these, okay? Ask me to define, sets of 5 of these things at once, and then grade my responses on a scale of 1 to 5, which is how they were going to be graded on the test. And sure enough, this worked very well. It was providing definitions that line up really well with the textbook, and it's essentially just, flashcards over and over again, but just done for me. So it was effective because, flashcards are effective. But you can see how in this situation, I used AI as a tool and I didn't rely on it. I could have gone around and I could have done flashcards. I didn't remove mental effort by using AI in this way. I just removed the tasks, the setup, the annoying like work that isn't actually the mental effort. I removed that from the studying so that I could just spend more time on the actual mental effort, the actual learning, right? Because mental effort is required for that learning. And I shared that technique with a few other students, and they all said the same thing, that it was extremely helpful. It was providing good definitions, it was grading them well. And yeah, that's just using AI as a tool rather than as a necessity, rather than relying on it. It's like, let's say you're going to go learn to ride the bike. Are you going to watch someone else ride the bike? Maybe at first you're going to do that, but when it actually comes down to learning, how are you going to do it? You're going to get on that bike yourself and you're going to try to ride, and you're going to get pointers from someone else. Somebody else is going to be helping you. And so if you extend that analogy to with AI, right? Watching somebody else ride the bike is like, getting the solution for your assignment through AI. It can be helpful, but there's only so many times you can watch somebody else ride the bike before it's actually time to get on that bike yourself and learn to ride, right? And so, you already watched somebody else ride the bike. So now why are you using AI to watch somebody ride the bike again and again and again? Like at some point, you need to be the one to get on the bike, okay? And that's what using AI as tools is instead. It's you getting on the bike, okay? And you asking for pointers, or you using, tools like training wheels, okay? Training wheels is you getting on the bike still, but you have little assistance. And so that's like how I was using AI as a tool to, help me with my machine design class where I was grading my definitions that I was providing. That was using AI as a tool, not as a reliant. I was still riding the bike my own. I was still, putting in that mental effort. I just had that little assistance. I just had those little training wheels that are essentially tools for helping to learn the material or to learn how to ride the bike. And so I want you to really think about that. Okay. Draw the connection between mental effort and riding the bike. You cannot learn to ride the bike without actually riding the bike, just like you cannot learn without the mental effort. Okay. So that's all I have for this video. I hope it helps change your framework, change your mindset when it comes to using AI in your studies, because it's doing more harm than good. And so I hope you can, learn to ride that bike yourself instead of always just watching someone else and expecting you to just be able to hop on and do it right the first time.